Okay. Excuse me. Just burped out of nowhere. We're gonna watch the new Buzzfeed Unsolved, and I'm gonna at least start it. I don't know if I'm gonna have time to finish it. It's 26 minutes, 27 almost, so, but we're gonna start it. Okay.
This week on Buzzfeed Unsolved, we investigate the Cleveland torso murderer, one of the most gruesome serial killers of all time.
That's a hell of an accomplishment.
Where it's bars, gambling dens, and brothels.
I'm into that. I like that place. But back then, not a lot to amuse yourself with. So I would for sure, every night of the week, be down at a bar, a gambling den, or a brothel.
So this is part of the recurring theme that you've had throughout the show, where if there weren't modern devices,
I'd be a monster.
An insane psychopath.
Yes.
With the base of Jackass Hill.
That's actually what that's named. I know that was going to elicit some kind of giggle.
Sucks.
So just get it.
I would at least want people to look at my body and go, yeah, that's Shane. That was Shane. Who's being eaten right now.
That's Shane in that basset hound's mouth.
Give him a send-off, whatever. Say your kind words about him.
That'd be a happy dog. That's a big-ass bone.
On July 22nd, in a manner that the coroner noticed, was confident in one stroke, which implied that the killer was both brazen and educated in human anatomy.
This is gross, but I think it's hard to cut off a head.
It apparently is kind of hard.
Yeah.
And there was one case where someone it took them, I forget which royal it was a British royal.
Yeah.
It took 5 strokes. Also, another thing, you are slightly alive. I was reading this one recorded case of a guy who watched someone's head get cut off by the guillotine.
Yeah.
And he said the head rolled around and he saw the guy's eyes.
He blinked?
He blinked and he saw recognition in the eyes when he said his name.
Wasn't there an old tale of someone who, for science, told the person getting executed to blink as long as they could?
Oh, see, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Like if you were a piece of shit your whole life, you're getting executed because you're an awful person.
Like,
the least you could do
this thing for
one
science,
solid
man.
on the way out.
Give us, yeah, a little something.
You'd be even better. Not blink. What if they were like, why don't you give us a
wink?
Because your vocal cords are gone, right? So but you could wink. You give a little wink.
I guess
a little cheeky wink.
I would ask them to chop it just below the vocal cords so I could kind of roll over and be like, hello, my baby. Hello.
At this point, many local papers reported the murder spree on a near daily basis, and
that is the most cartoonish
hobo
hobo I've ever seen. He looked like he watched a Bugs Bunny cartoon in which Bugs Bunny was on the railroad and was like, yep, that'll do.
You think he has a couple PBJs in that little bag there?
Probably.
Maybe this is like accurate to the time.
I don't think it was.
So you think that he was just like, I bet you this is what vagrants look like. And he went out there and he was like walking around, he's like, Jesus Christ, I don't look anything like
Probably. There were probably actual people who looked like real human beings.
Just dirty.
And then this guy walking on like he walked off the Warner Brothers set.
Jumping back into the timeline, on February 23rd, this left authorities to wonder whether the drugs were recreational or used to keep her from moving.
Maybe this contributes to why the strokes were so confident and so absolute.
Because they weren't moving?
Because they weren't moving. And the only reason I posit this is because drugs may be involved in one of the case's main suspects later.
Okay. Pretty horrifying to imagine that you were drugged and you can only just move your eyes. You ever had that? Is that in a movie?
That's in Wolf Creek. Some serial killer cuts someone's spinal cord so that they can't move, so they're forced to just watch what's happening to their friend.
But their eyes can move.
But their eyes can move.
That's horrifying.
It is pretty scary.
As all of these gruesome murders were ongoing, Mayor Harold Burden increasingly pressured Safety Director Elliot Ness to make headway. You may know Elliot Ness as the famed G-Man, who led his illustrious group of untouchables to bust Al Capone's breweries. Other credits to Ness's glowing resume included defeating the Mayfield Road Mob, crooked police, and labor racketeers, contributing to his status as a law enforcement legend. As city safety director, Ness was involved with both unidentified, were found in perhaps the most reckless location of all. The bodies were found within view of Elliot Ness's office window, a taunt that obviously most noteworthy in a move that has been criticized. Ness then ordered the shacks to be burnt down. The people displaced were then charged with being homeless, which they pled guilty for. Ness's involvement in this episode of the investigation has been referred to as cruel and draconian.
Okay.
This, I mean, he pretty much just said, I can't find what's going on in this part of town. Let's burn it all down.
It feels like maybe the fingerprint excuse is exactly that. It's just an excuse when people are like, hey, why you terrorizing an entire population of people and setting their homes on fire? And suddenly he needed to come up with a reason.
Oh, he's coming to his senses.
Yeah, fingerprint. Like it just seems like he's just sort of backpedaling there.
He was just like, fingerprints.
He didn't just look fingerprint. He didn't.
I need fingerprints. That's
Yeah, sure.
Either way, he later said he had been beaten and recanted his confession. In fact, Dolezal had suffered 6 broken ribs while in the custody of the sheriff, further casting doubt upon the confession. The confession appeared to be coached, as it was a mix of prepackaged details and incomprehensible ramblings. According to case expert James Bedell, the lead detective on the case later said in his memoirs, quote, "This is the first time that I've ever known anyone to confess to a crime that didn't know the details of the crime to which he was confessing," end quote.
They beat the shit out of him, probably.
100%.
Yes.
And it's very, very sad.
Yes.
Dolezal remained incarcerated for the crime, which makes the event that followed all the more suspicious. 1 month later, in August 1939, Dolezal committed suicide in his jail cell before going to trial, hanging himself on a hook that was 5 feet and 7 inches from the ground. The problem with that is, Frank Dolezal was 5 feet and 8 inches tall. Logically, how could a person hang themselves from an object that they were taller than?
It seems like it may be logistically impossible for him to hang himself from it. He'd have to...
You can, I don't know, I think that's possible.
It's suspicious to me, given the things that preceded it. They coached his confession out of him.
Oh,
Maybe they're starting
so
to...
you're saying the police maybe have... Oh, that didn't occur to me, that the police would...
What I'm saying is...
And his team was laid on Dolezal's grave in August 2010, with Dolezal's family members in attendance, that reads, quote, "Rest now," end quote, thus vindicating Dolezal posthumously.
In these Unsolved episodes, it's not often that we get nice sentiment. And this...
Let's hang on to this one. Let's really savor it.
It's real. This is actually very lovely.
Rest now. That's nice.
That's nice.
The second and final suspect, he was a doctor and would have had the necessary skill and anatomical knowledge to perform the killings. Sweeney had also been to probate court, administered a lie detector test to Sweeney, which he failed twice. Keeler told Ness, quote, "That's your man. I might as well throw my machine out the window if I say anything different," end quote.
This makes me wonder if he, in his mind, thought he was sort of a vigilante justice type. You know, because Bruce Wayne was a very successful, very powerful man.
Are you comparing the Torso Killer to Batman?
I'm not.
It sounds like you're comparing the Torso Killer to Batman.
I'm just saying I think maybe the Torso Killer...
In the 50s, Ness received taunting note cards from someone claiming to be Francis Sweeney, and since Sweeney was a secret suspect, Emil Fronek told authorities that in 1934, a doctor tried to drug him. He remembered the office was somewhere around East 50th and East 55th on Broadway Street.
Because I imagine it would be pretty hard to explain this. I know this looks bad.
He's got a head cold.
The answer may lie with David Cowles, the leader of the Scientific Identification Bureau. Detective Murillo felt that Sweeney was too overweight to make the rail trip back and forth between Newcastle and Cleveland, which consequently led to Murillo's discounting of Sweeney as a suspect. But, to be fair, Murillo had also been kept in the dark about Sweeney's secret interrogation and lie detector test.
Okay, pretty good. I'm really cold again because I'm outside again, so I'm gonna go again. Bye.